Welcome to this kickoff meeting of the E4C Student Challenge. So I'm François Guillem, I'm one of the members of the steering committee of this challenge. And together with my colleague Patrick Fido-Drobanski, we're going to make a short presentation of the challenge and then have time for questions. And we'll try to answer all your questions. So this is in fact the third edition of this challenge. So we started 2 years ago for the first time. And each year we try to have a new subject. And the subject this year is about transportation. So how to reduce the carbon emission from transportation. So here's a brief outline of the presentation. So we are going to start by briefly describing the goal of the challenge, a brief history of the challenge, and then describe the main steps of the challenge, which is going to last from October, November till May for the last things. So after this global description, we're going to go into more details. So Philippe is going to describe to you in more details the subject of this year and what we expect from you in terms of deliverables, so the reports and the overall presentation before the jury. After that, I'm going to go into more details about some practical information. So because this is a challenge by teams, so we will tell you a little bit more on what we expect in terms of teams and how you will try to build your teams, and the role of the mentors I'm going to attribute to you, and the role of the jury in this challenge. And at the end, we have time for question and answer. So here we are about 20 or 25, I don't know, and I see that online maybe 10 or 12 participants are there. So we are missing a bit from the students that were registered initially. So let me start maybe by the last and most important information. So if you were not registered in the event and you want to receive information about the challenge, don't forget to give us your address, your email address, so we can contact you to send you more information about the challenge. So the goal of the challenge is very simple. We ask you to propose a viable solution that will help reducing carbon emission from transportation. So it's a very wide subject, but very important subject. You cannot deal all the question behind this problem, but we ask you to focus on a specific question and give an answer, but a viable answer, not too ambitious. But try to be original in the question you will be addressing and in the solution you will be proposing. So this will be described in the second part by Philippe. So a few words about the history of the challenge. So we started 2 years ago. And so, as I mentioned, the subject here each year is changing. So the first subject in 2019-2020 was about carbon neutrality in city. And the title was Imagine a Carbon Neutral City. So we were very happy with the project we had for the first year. So this was just the year for the first year for the COVID. And this made some difficulties in the organization in the last part, but we achieved, we succeeded in having the challenge going to the end with the defense before the jury. So the second edition was also about carbon neutrality, but the goal there was to propose a roadmap for achieving net zero carbon emission by 2050. And to focus on what we call local scale action. And the idea was to focus either on a geographical sector or field of activity, and to have a balance of carbon emission in this sector and to propose solution to make it go to zero by 2050. It was maybe a more difficult subject, but we also had very interesting projects from the teams. And this year we choose to address the question of transportation, and the title is Keep Moving Without Emitting. So in terms of participation, we hope that we have similar participation to the previous years. So for the 2 previous editions, we started with about 100 students registered at the beginning. But at each step, we lose some participants, as we show next what are the steps. And so the students were coming from about 10 to 12 to 15 universities or schools, and I will tell you which are the partners for this challenge. So at the end, what in the two previous editions, the remaining teams for the final report were about 8 in the first year and 10 in the second year. And so we expect to have a similar number, maybe even more this year. This can give you an idea of in terms of order of magnitude of the number of participants. So here is the first description of the timeline of the challenge. That's what we're proposing you. So the very first step, so I'm going to go briefly over these different steps, and we'll go into more details in some of these steps next in the presentation. So the first step is to, so you at this time only individual participants or potential participants, and we'll ask you to gather in teams, and which is very important. And the registration, the deadline for registration of the teams is in about 1 month. So we set the deadline to November 21st. So then you will start really working with your team and with your mentor that will be attributed to you. And the first step is really what we call a preliminary report or pre-project, where you describe the main ideas of your project. And this will tell you how it will be evaluated, just to make sure that you're going in the right direction. So this will be roughly at the end of January. So then you will start writing the full report, and the deadline for submitting the full report will be around mid-April. And so the deliverable that you will have to give at this time will be a report of about, we say, 20 to 40 pages. I think last year the smallest one was 40 pages, and the largest was maybe 60 pages. So after that, so at each step of selection, the main selection is comes here by the jury that would select from this written project report maybe 5 teams for the oral presentation that will take place around mid-May. And it's a 2-step process, which will be described to you next. And the decision will make its final decision around early June. And then the award ceremony will take place in September. So the ceremony for the previous challenge took place in September, but it was about a month ago. So now I will give the floor to Philippe for the discussion of the subject of this year.
So I'm Philippe Robinson, the director of the Energy4Climate Center. So this year, as François told, the subject is keep moving without emitting. So it's the motto that teaser of what you should be addressing. So of course, the translation of that is so addressing the issue of low carbon mobility, low carbon transportation. Transport represents about 15% of the total greenhouse gas emission. And there is an agreement to reduce transportation CO2 emissions by 50% by 2050. And so there is, of course, an urgent need for innovations in terms of technologies, but also in terms of energy supply for this transportation, infrastructure, habits, legal instruments. Of course, how we will address this project is not to address everything. Of course, you have to focus on a specific maybe technology or domain of transportation, the aircraft industry and the urban mobility, or it can be, of course, vehicles and so on and so forth. Anyway, so you have to focus on the scope, on one subject you think is disruptive in terms of let's say CO2 emission reduction, and so you have to be based on the focus you've chosen. You have to be, of course, creative. Quantitative, this is key. Okay, it's not we need to know how much we can expect in terms of CO2 emission reduction by this technology, how much it represents globally. So is it disruptive in terms of climate change mitigation, and also propose viable solutions. So it can be economically viable, socially viable solutions. So you have to address, and that's one of the issues. Francois will come back on that. On the team, so how you build a team. So we have to address a systemic problem, okay, and a focus project and focus subject you have identified, but you have to address it in a systemic way. So which generally implies, let's say, multidisciplinary expertise. So in terms of deliverables, as Francois said, so there are two deliverables, main deliverables. One is a preliminary document, which we call a project. It can be in French or in English, depending on the team composition. The template is provided, and with a number of things that you have to develop. So the title, the description of the team, and in the description of the team, also you may explain why the composition of the team helped in addressing the problem you want to address, the project context, the problem solved. Once you have identified, focused on a specific problem, how you want to solve it. Proposed solution means to deploy this solution, preliminary roadmap, and impacts. At this level, there will be a scientific committee. So it's not the final jury that will review, and that will come back to the teams with advice. Okay, it's not a milestone where there is no evaluation in terms of you can process or you have to stop at that time. Okay, it comes back with advice. You are too late, or it's not focused enough, or whatnot. Okay, so this is the preliminary first deliverable, and the second deliverable is let's say a large document, so you have to address everything, and the format is free because it can also be a part of the evaluation also. Yes. So once you have submitted your full project, it will be reviewed by a jury of experts. When I say experts, it's real experts, so external experts, which are either members of academies of science, academies of technology, R&D director in global companies. So it's really a jury of experts, which generally have provided a very, let's say, tough evaluation. Okay, so they really wanted to extract the projects that can be, let's say, that can have a life after the challenge. So the first year, two teams were on the podium, and last year one team on the podium. Generally, their feedbacks were very positive for all projects. Once again, even though all the projects were really good, they really wanted to extract, to identify the projects that objectively could be, let's say, fully incubated in startup or things like that. Okay. So, among these, the projects that will be submitted in April, the jury will select about 5-6 projects that will have, so that will be that will have to make an oral presentation of 30 minutes in front of the jury. They will evaluate so the project, and the presentation will be followed by a question and answer session. You will have something like 7 days.
This is the next step.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah. For the final stream, the jury will send written questions and we will have a week to answer them in writing. And then, of course, based on that, the jury will select the winning teams. For the finalist teams, they will have to make a 2-minute video describing the project. And so to illustrate this part, we show you the video that was one of the four video that was made last year.
The digital sector is an ever-growing industry, taking more and more space into our daily lives as its technologies are being developed. As such, the emissions it generates are ever more important to consider. Research has shown that the tubes, that is, streaming websites, represent around 4% of digital greenhouse gas emissions. However, these emissions are hidden beneath the surface. For instance, would you be able to tell which pollutes most between driving your car to work every morning or watching your favorite YouTube video once a week? Chances are, these are more or less equivalent. So, do you really know how much carbon emissions you generate when watching YouTube? This changes now. This is why we are very proud to present GreenTubes, the newest YouTube extension. Imagine a world where, at the click of a finger, you can know exactly how much carbon you consume and how much you're saving. Under every video, you will now be able to see how much carbon was emitted when filming the video, based on how much each YouTuber polluted when filming, and how much you're emitting when watching the video, based on the device, network, and quality you're using. Every month, you will receive a report where you will be able to view how much you've contributed to limiting carbon consumption, along with useful tips as to how to decrease your emissions even more. These numbers, generated by a powerful AI algorithm based on the most up-to-date scientific calculations, will also be compared to the emissions of daily life activities. This will allow you to gain full transparency over the true pollution generated by the content you are watching, and to understand how to successfully limit your own emissions. A small step towards helping the planet. Things have never been simpler.
Okay, so this was one of the 4 finalist projects last year. It's not the winning project, but see a very nice video. So I think the students were impressed us a lot about this part of the challenge, which was new last year. So we're going to ask you again to do that because we thought it was a good idea. And then this video clip was broadcast on
the LinkedIn, on the E4C LinkedIn platform. I think it was also broadcast by the IT Paris. So
I don't know how many times you said that it's seen now, but I think it's a few hundreds, maybe 1,000 now. So it is real visibility to the project. So if you succeed to reach this step, then you have very good visibility for the project. So now we'll come back to some details about practical information for the challenge. So the really first thing you have to do is you can start thinking of an idea that you have, but you have to build a team. So so the rule that we set is to have is to first all the students, and the number of students per team should be between 4 and 7. So we think that 7 is the maximum, and less than 4 is not enough. And so this student must be from one of the partner universities of school, and I will show you next the list of universities. So we allow 1 or 2 exceptions in the team. So if you have 1 or 2 friends that are studying in different universities and want to join your team, we allow that. It should be a minority of the members that are not from the partner universities. So what we insist on, and this was even more last year than the first year, is to have teams from different universities and schools to make really interdisciplinary teams. And this was, I think, a real success last year. So we had teams with students coming from engineering school, from HEC, from Sciences Po. And so, and we'll give you the opportunity to meet students from these different schools. So if you have friends in this school, you can contact them. We'll give you the opportunity to meet new students to build these teams. So the idea is really to have a combination of expertise in different fields, so in science and technology, on social science, economics, or management, to have a really a very strong team to address the challenge. So we have actually not decided completely yet which means we are going to use to meet each other. So we are really making a decision now. So last year we used the Discord group, but we are making a decision now where we're going to have a dedicated platform for that, or we could use another solution like a Facebook group. But this is just to give you the idea of how you will have the opportunity to meet each other if you don't know each other yet. And then, so this will be the main task for the coming months. And the deadline for registering your team is 21st of November. We also ask you to choose a name for your team, so you can be creative also in the name of your team. Yes, concerning the partner institutions for the challenge, so in brief, it's École Polytechnique and all its partners. So to start the list, so École Polytechnique is everywhere, but to start the list, I would say that since this challenge is organized by the E4C Interdisciplinary Center, so E4C means Energy4Climate. So the first partner of the partners of this E4C center, so the IP Paris schools, so École Polytechnique, ENSTA, ENSAE, Télécom Paris, and Télécom Super. And the other school is École des Ponts Paris Tech. Then we have the partners from the Columbia Alliance, so also École Polytechnique, but also Sciences Po Paris, University Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and also Columbia University, which was our first partner abroad. And for the first two editions, we had several participants from Columbia University. And even the first year, one of the two winning teams was from the Columbia University. So I think so. Last year we had the first participant from HEC, so we had quite a lot of participants last year from HEC, and I think from the participants in this kickoff meeting, I saw that we also had this year a lot of interest from HEC, and that's from HEC. Yes, okay, welcome. And last, okay, also two other list of partners, one from what is called Eurotech universities. So partners from the Polytechnic abroad, so ETU from Denmark, EPFM from Switzerland, TU from the Netherlands, Eindhoven, sorry, some from Munich in Germany, and Technion in Israel. And also a new member this year is the KSAT from Poland. Okay, so in your team, so once you have decided for the subject you want to address, you will be attributed a mentor. So you can choose your own mentor, but if you want to have a mentor, you can ask us to provide you with a mentor. What is the role of the mentor? The mentor is there to guide you in your project. So you can read on that, but it will not tell you what to do, but it will help you bring in the right direction. The mentor is also usually an expert in the field. He has a network, so he can give you some point of contact if you want to have address a specific question, you want information on a given subject. You can ask your mentor to put you in contact with this network of experts. And then, well, the mentor is also there for give some advice and have a critical perspective on the work. So as I mentioned, this expert can be one of the professors or member of the public sector or from the private sector. So it's really quite open. And as I mentioned, you can either choose your own mentor or you can ask us to help you find a mentor. So this was already mentioned briefly by Philippe. So how is the evaluation of the project made? It's like what we call scientific committee of the challenge. It's not the jury. It's more a recommendation step. So we just make sure that you're going in the right direction. We almost never stop the project at this step. What may happen is that we give some recommendation to change a little bit the orientation of the project or to focus more on the project. I think it happened once, yes, that we suggested that the team was too small, so we suggested two teams to merge. Okay, this is what can happen at this step, or we just say everything is going well, just continue like that, and it's okay. Concerning the jury, so we have not decided yet who's going to be the chair of the jury. So for the first 2 years, this is just to give an idea of the profile of the chair of the jury. So the first year, the chair was E4C, who is a member of the French Academy of Sciences. In the second year, it was Mrs. Claude Naon, member of the National Academy of Technologies of France. So we are in contact with a few potential chairs, and we will do soon his name, his or her name. And then the chair of the jury will decide on the composition of this jury with something like 5, 6, or 7 members who have expertise in different fields covering the transportation sector. Yes, as mentioned also by Philippe, it's up to the jury to decide if there is just one winner, 2 winners, or 3 winners. So there were 2 winners in for the first year, 1 winner for the second year. As mentioned by Philippe, in those cases, the jury was very selective, also very encouraging for the project, but had a very high standard for deciding who were the winning teams. So what is the award? So we have small gifts, but mostly the idea is to give visibility to the project and to offer support. Also, we had several examples in the past year where the idea was more or less to launch a startup. And in this case, we can provide some contact to help teams in their project. Yes, we wanted to organize some visits, but for the last 2 years it was not possible. Maybe this would be possible this year. Why? So we try to adapt depending on the situation and depending on the teams that we selected. So yes, as I mentioned initially, the important point is that we keep your email address so we can contact you. So in principle, all of you or most of you have registered to the event, right? So we have your email address. If it's not the case, so please send us your, or you can write it on the board. But by any means, just give us your email address. And once we have decided if we use a platform for organizing the challenge this year or not, we will have all the email address for that. So there is no commitment once you give us your email. It's just an expression of interest for the challenge. There is no obligation, of course, to continue for the next steps. If you don't find a team or if you think this is too much work for you this year, you can step down at any moment. But if you think this can be interesting for you, just give us your email so we can keep in touch with you. So this is the end of the presentation. So with Philippe, we are here to answer all your questions. So don't hesitate to ask any question. And we'll try to answer you. Well, there can be questions in the room here or online. No question. What can I add?
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. Just wondering how much feedback do you get in seminars?
So you have a mentor. So the mentor is someone that you can activate when you want. So you should be able to give you feedbacks along the project. Then officially, I would say as milestone in the challenge, the first official feedback from an external, or I would say committee, will be in January with the project. So there again, there will be recommendations or just go as it is now. Okay, so it's recommendations. It does not address the content itself. Okay, it's is it in the scope of the challenge? Do you feel that you are too late, or you do not address, of course, the specific content? And then, of course, well, the feedback will be part given of the journey.
Yes, well, yes, I don't know exactly by feedback. So yes, during the progress when you're writing the project, the main feedback is from your mentor, and so it depends really on the team. Some teams, I think, were meeting with their mentor maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. So you can do that by what you want. And if you have any questions, you can also contact us if you have a question about what is expected. And the feedback, yes, from the national project could be maybe half a page or 1 page from us. And from the jury, yes, they also write a report on an evaluation report on
Sorry for this information, but in order to build teams, and especially into institutions teams, is there some, I mean, in the coming weeks, some kind of tool or meeting, I'm not saying speed dating, but basically it, so that we can see if maybe somebody from Philippines or other schools have the same idea as us?
Yes. So the first speed dating is just after. We'll invite you to for, let's say, a little food. So you will have facilities to interact. Otherwise, as was said by François, last year we used Discord, which was convenient, by the way. So if you do not know, it's a platform for gamers, but anyway, you can. It's very easy, so you can interact, chat. So that's the way. We're discussing this year maybe a Facebook group, or we are negotiating with a provider, a platform provider, to help us organize. So you will be very soon, very soon. We will send you the information of how to speak with.
Yes, okay. Well, we are hoping to be able to give you the final answer today, but we had some delay in the contract with the provider for the platform. So if we cannot contract with it now, we already discovered a solution as last year. So this is why we need your email address, is to give you the link or the name of the group on Discord. And last year, I think this is how most of the group teams met. So we had some teams that were only from one institution or school. Of course, this is easier, but this was not what we expected. Really, I mean, there was really very good interaction in teams where we had, as I said, from mixed with students from critical technique. It was really interesting. I think they really enjoyed it. To meet with people.
All the finalists were from teams, mixed teams.
Three of the four were really nice.
What happened to the winners of the previous editions? Did they continue the project? Or?
first edition, we put them in contact with fundraiser, but well, part of them were from the so basically I don't think they finalized. But we have, let's say, our network, and so this was the other team was from Colombia. So we don't remember what we support we gave them.
It was again a contact, but we had really a solution for the process in Paris, but we have biofuel used in the process of Paris. But again, we were planning to come to Paris for the ceremony, and we could not come. And so we could not really organize a meeting with this company or the solution we were proposing. Last year, I think yes, for the 4 or 5 teams, one was really in a startup mode, and I think for this one, we will be in contact. And also, one of the projects was from city in Africa. And also, in this case, we provided a contact. So we don't know yet exactly what has come out of all this point of contact. But okay, it's a good point that we should maybe have a follow-up of what we get. But I think we were all very happy with the experience. And okay, we should have asked them to come to tell you directly what was their feedback on this experience.
Was the sanitary crisis in providing the support we wanted.
I think it's good for you the experience. It can also be accepted in some of the universities as validate some credits or for your you can write some certificates, and sometimes you have to do project as a project in your cities.
Yeah, and also participating in challenges and also very challenging issues, challenging challenge. Some of them, we looked at some LinkedIn pages of some of the winning teams, the finalists, and I saw that they put participation to the challenge in the city. Are there any other questions? Online? No chat? No, so we don't think any. So, 2 minutes to write something. For those who are online, if you have any questions, put it on the chat. Otherwise, so we will close the kickoff in 2 minutes. And for those who are here, we will have some orange juice and some. Okay, if there are no questions, so thank you for those who are online for attending this kickoff by Zoom, and for the others, we just reconvene at the hall for some speed dating.
Thank you.
Thank you.